And we're live. Hello, everyone. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, and welcome to episode number 88 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues. We will be on immediately with a new colleague of mine, Russell Leak of Underdog MMA. So he's right on time. We'll be adding him in. We did a quick, okay. I have to tell everybody this is a breakthrough thing, man. Russell Leak introduced me to the fact that it's not iPhone to iPhone for Facebook Live. It can be iPhone to Android.
Yep.
Well, that opens up a whole new world for me, son.
I am an Android guy. I tried Apple products a long time ago.
Yeah.
And they weren't for me. So I can get three Androids for the price of your iPhone.
All right. Well, I might be looking at different investments then.
They're good products.
Yeah. So listen, you're a hard guy to read. To me, you look and you sound like a choir boy, but you're a coach.
I am.
Okay. But you're also a coach for MMA fighters.
Sure.
Okay. So which one is the real you?
Say that again, please. I had a notification.
Yeah. Which one is the real you?
Hold on a second. I got to figure this out. I got to figure out how to stop people from texting me while we're talking. That's going to be annoying.
Oh, okay. I have to do that too. I forgot to do that. Is
there a way to do that?
Well, on an iPhone, in settings, there's a thing called Do Not Disturb.
All right. Well, I'm gonna turn my ringer off, and let's see if that does it. I turned everything down to silent.
Okay. All right.
So you said which one is the truth?
Yeah. Which one's the real you? Okay.
They're both true. I mean, I really have to separate myself as a person, as a martial arts practitioner, from the goals of my students, which are really different from mine. Mm-hmm. And that's how I do it. But I think also it has to do with a little bit of the misconception about what mixed martial arts practitioners are. They're a lot more. They're a lot more like normal people than what normal people think they are. So I would say that I am different from that, but I'm not that different, meaning that they're not that different from normal people. So, you learn that being around them.
Right. But but I think that perception of them being different. Look, in the old days before MMA and pay-per-view, and everybody was aware of martial artists were considered weird people, weren't they?
We are.
Okay.
We are. Martial artists are weird people.
But in a good way.
Some good, some bad.
Okay. So when you say that MMA people are no different, give me an example of what you mean.
Well, I won't say they're no different. They're different. They're just not as different as what people think. And what I mean by that is, when you watch MMA, it's violent, it's brutal. So then people then tend to assume that the people that do MMA are some sort of thug, savage,
right?
Killers, and they're really not. The guys that I have, I can't speak for all, but I can speak for a lot of them. They're good guys. They're mostly blue collar type guys, although you have a lot that are college educated, a lot that are business owners and things of that nature, that just happen to also not just like the training martial arts, but like the challenge of actually fighting for real.
Yeah.
And that doesn't appeal to everybody, and in fact, it doesn't even appeal to most martial artists. So people that compete in MMA are not representative of most martial artists, because what most people would try to avoid, they actually find some enjoyment in. But to be honest, they tend to be hardworking guys, very respectful for the most part. I think what happens is the people at the highest level who are making the millions and getting the airplay on TV tend to come to represent the brand. But really, most of the people that do MMA or fight MMA have day jobs. And you couldn't go around being some thug savage and going to, your work in your office every day. It's really not like that.
It's not Fight Club.
So I think the thing that, it's not. And I think the thing that separates the mixed martial artist from the martial artist is, if I had to make any separation, it's the mixed martial artist gets more reward from the external validation and the thrill of the fighting and the competition. Whereas the martial artist is more internally motivated and is not looking for the external validation and really doesn't really care about competition. Your mixed martial artist will tend to compete more when they have, to train more when they have a competition coming up.
Okay.
People who identify as martial artists tend to train regardless of what they have going on. It's more of a year-round thing for them, and they train for the fun, they train for the enjoyment. There are some, not all, but some people who fight MMA who identify as both, who are martial artists and also mixed martial arts competitors. And those are the people that you see training in the traditional martial arts when they're not fighting. And then when it's time to fight, they compete. But typically, you can tell the difference between somebody who is simply a martial artist or a martial artist and somebody who is more of a martial sportist, as people would say. Or a mixed martial arts competitor. But there are some people that cross both lines. For me, go ahead.
I was going to ask you what the percentage is at your place at Underdog of.
That's a great question. The majority of people at my gym, I would say, are neither. They're the third category, and that is the hobbyist or the casual person.
Okay.
The person who trains for sport or for fun. They like the camaraderie, they like the atmosphere, but they don't have any particular goals in terms of like competition. Like if they compete, they just do it for fun or the challenge of it, but it's not like they want to be a competitor. I also don't have what I would consider to be a lot of people who are true martial artists. I would say the more what I have is people that want to train, want to have fun, want to learn a little bit. They're hobbyists. That's the majority of what I have. And then I have a minority of people who desire to be competitive fighters. And they compete regularly. They compete in multiple disciplines. They fight in MMA. But that's also a small number of people. I would say the smallest number of people are the people that I would consider to be the true martial artists and the people who kind of live the martial arts lifestyle. They tend to be instructors of whatever discipline they are, whether they're either in a single discipline or multiple disciplines. And they live, eat, breathe, sleep that discipline that they represent. And they're doing outside study, they're reading books, they're going to seminars, they're living what you would think would be a martial arts lifestyle. That's not really the type of gym that I'm running. Those are the types of gyms that I came from, that created me. But that's not my goal as a business owner.
Okay, explain that. Where you came from, because here's what I think I recall. You're a full instructor under the late Richard Bustillo.
Yes.
And that's it.
Because there's not a lot out there about me, because my expression of my martial arts isn't really about me, and it hasn't been. So I guess a brief history. Like I grew up, wanting to do martial arts. When I was young, I watched, movies here and there, but more the action movies of the 80s. I was born in 1980, so I didn't have the martial arts influence of like the 60s and 70s. I had the martial arts influence of the late 80s, early 90s, which was, the ninja movies that came out, some of those movies. Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, the
Right.
action movies of the 80s, that sort of, those are my influences. I always wanted to do martial arts. I did some martial arts when I was a kid. I did like a Japanese style Jujutsu in New York, Long Island, where I grew up.
Okay.
And then, I remember hearing about Jeet Kune Do. It's actually my father who introduced me to it. My father was into martial arts, into Kung Fu. And he did that when he was younger. And actually now he's in his 70s. He does it now. He probably did it today.
Wow.
I saw my dad check in. My dad's watching us now. But
Very
my dad
good.
does Tai Chi. So that's his expression of martial arts now.
Yeah.
But I remember we had a book in the basement, and it was like a Kung Fu book. And I picked it up, and the book was separated into the beginning of, I wish I could find the book today. I probably have it. I have a ton of books, but maybe I don't. But the book was separated into the first half of the book was soft styles, internal styles of Kung Fu. And the second half of the book was external or hard styles of Kung Fu. And I remember going through this book and talking to my dad and saying, hey, Dad, because he had done Kung Fu when he was young.
Yeah. Could that have
20,
been
30.
Could that have been Bruce Tegner's book?
I mean, we're talking, honestly, that it was 30 years ago.
Okay.
So I couldn't tell you what book it was.
Yeah.
I might still have it somewhere. I might not.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But it was a white book. I remember it was pretty hard, a soft cover book. And it just talked about Kung Fu. And in the beginning, it had soft styles. So the first half of the book was dedicated to internal styles. Last half of the book was dedicated to hard or external styles. And I remember talking to my dad about Kung Fu. And he was telling me what he thought to be the best style. I was like, Dad, what's the best style of martial arts? Because that's the old thing, right? Who beats who in a fight?
Yeah.
That's what everybody used to think.
Yeah.
So
they still do.
I asked him what the best. Yeah, they do. But we'll get to what proved that in a second. So I asked him that question, and he said, oh, well, he thinks some of the White Crane Kung Fu internal styles were the best. But then he said something which was great for me. He said, but I think what would be best for you, knowing me, he said, I think when you're younger, you want a more external style of Kung Fu. You want the hard style. He said, for you, there's JKD, there's Jeet Kune Do, which was the first time I ever heard of Jeet Kune Do. But coincidentally, it was also the last chapter in that book was Jeet Kune Do. So I skipped to the end and read about Jeet Kune Do and Bruce Lee. And I even though I had trained some martial arts when I was like 10 years old, 11, 12,
right,
I didn't really come back to it again until after I graduated college. But it was always something where it was just like, I'm not a big guy. I'm not a tough guy or any sort of way. Now I know, now I can fight because I'm a martial artist. But I didn't grow up. I was never a tough guy. So I always had this feeling. I went to engineering school, so I'm basically a nerd. I am a nerd, right? So I felt like there was an imbalance where I didn't know how to defend myself. I didn't know what to do. And I had a smart mouth. I talk a lot of shit. I not anymore, but I did when I was younger.
Right. And
I always just wanted to be able to feel like I could say whatever I want to whoever I wanted. And if I had to back my words up, because my words were bigger than my body at the time. If I had to back my words up, I'd be able to do it. And so that's what really drove me to train martial arts. And so as soon as I graduated college, I was broke. I had nothing. I had no car, no job, no money. I had nothing. So when you're 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, a lot of things that you might want to do, you can't do because you don't have access to the resources to do them. So as soon as I graduated, I had money, I had a car, and I went looking for a martial arts gym. And I remember graduating college, coming home, living at home. And as soon as I got a job, I went out looking for a place to train. And I found a place in Long Island that was a JKD gym. Probably the guy is Sifu Greg Pichardo, Phoenix Mixed Martial Arts. He's a big C-Lot guy. He's under Cass Magnet. So that was the first place that I went to train. Happy that I went there because it's weird the way that life takes you. It was good that I went there. And the reason why it was good is because I was looking all around at a bunch of other schools. I looked at a Wing Chun school that was close by me because I knew that Bruce Lee had, something to do with that.
Right.
I had never watched a UFC. I never heard of the UFC. So when I say I never heard of UFC, I graduated college in 2002. And in 2002, I had never heard of the UFC, which is abnormal for somebody in my position.
Yeah.
It's not something that I aspired to or even knew what it was. I didn't watch my first UFC until well after I was training Jeet Kune Do. So what ended up happening was I ended up going to a school in Long Island, which is now pretty famous. At the time, it wasn't. And that was Matt Serra's school. Now, big time MMA guy.
Yeah.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I went there first. And for some reason, it didn't speak to me. And I think it didn't speak to me because thankfully I didn't know about the MMA. I didn't know about the UFC. I didn't know who he was. And if I had known kind of who he was, I probably would have trained there. So it was just me being ignorant. When you're a white belt, when you're new, you can go to 10 different schools and you don't know enough to know the difference between any of the styles or anything that's being offered, or if they're quality or if they're not. You don't know.
Right.
So I didn't know anything about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I didn't know anything about the ground. I didn't know anything. So I'm like, oh, what's this? Guys on top of each other rolling around, like, I'm out of here. I left. And I went to find a JKD school because that's what my dad told me to go after. So I started training with Sifu Greg. I trained with him not long, to be honest, maybe 5 or 6 months. And then I got a job in Connecticut in my degree. Well, so I just packed up and I moved. I'm still in Hartford, Connecticut. And I started training. Well, I started working up here in my career. And once I got settled in my career, I'm like, okay, I'm in this new city. I have a little bit of money. I have a car, blah, blah, blah. So I started looking for places to train. And then I found the person that actually became my Sifu, still to this day, really. And that was Sifu Chris Smith, who you may know, or I know you've met him before. Sifu Chris Smith, and he's under the IMB lineage.
Right.
But fortunately, Chris was certified under Sifu Heart Cell, I believe, full instructor under Sifu Heart Cell.
Okay.
I can't remember. Don't quote me on it.
Yeah.
And then he's also certified under Paul Vunak. So through Sifu Chris, I got to experience his representation of Sifu Bustillo, Sifu Heart Cell, and Sifu Vunak, which is 3 very different
representations
kind of the JKD have.
Yeah.
So I got to spend 6 months, and I trained with Sifu Cass, I think twice, 2 seminars I did with him. So I got to see kind of an Inasanto, Kali, Silat leaning lineage through Sifu Greg and Sifu Cass. But I was only there for a short period of time. That was my intro to JKD. And then I spent the majority of time under Sifu Chris. And that's kind of the short story that you would not have been able to find anywhere online.
Right. Yeah. And you just answered a whole bunch of questions that I had on my list here. In just like,
I'm sorry I did that.
No, that's fine. In just like one long sentence, right? That's perfect. Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm known for. My students tell me I talk too much.
Oh, join the club, man. So
but the funny thing is, if they think I talk too much, they only say that because they don't know how much Sifu Chris Smith, my coach, talk. I try to take what he would say in an hour and try to condense it to 15 minutes because he loves to talk about JK martial arts and all this stuff.
Right.
Me and him, we'll talk on the phone for hours about this sort of philosophical and background and stuff like that. So with my students, I recognize that they generally don't have the attention span for that. So I kind of filter it into what I think the nuts and bolts of what they need to know are. But that's because, as I said before, most of them are martial sportists, not martial artists. And they don't really have the attention span or care for a lot of the stuff that you're going to ask me about, and the reason why I don't share it, so.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So there's a bunch of things to use a common phrase that we need to unpack here, right?
Sure.
Because you've mentioned the phrase, the word representation. So I'm forming the impression that you think that there are that everybody has their own expression or interpretation of martial art, or maybe even of Jeet Kune Do?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So I think that you can try and also succeed. You can try to represent your instructor's martial art faithfully the way that they would have done it. That takes effort. So what I mean is, when I teach Sifu Chris Smith, it's filtered through my eyes. And as long as I'm conscious of that, you know you're getting Russell Leake's representation of Sifu Chris Smith. But because I've trained under him so long, I can also say, okay, but I can also teach you what he would teach you.
Yeah.
And so you see that throughout JKD, from Bruce Lee to his disciples, from his disciples to us, right? You can say, this is what Sifu Dan would have done. This is what Sifu Dan would show, and show that very faithfully. Or you can say, this is what I gained from my time training with him, and filter that and show it to you. There's pluses and minuses to both.
Okay. All right. So let me be a student and say to you, okay, so which is the better way?
I think the better way is to truthfully understand the difference between both. And so as long as I'm saying, this is what Sifu Chris did,
Yeah,
and I do it well, I'm good. I'm doing what my coach did, what my coach taught. Or I can say, this is the essence of what I've learned from him, but now I've added my own JKD, I've added what is my own, and modified it, because this is what I think works. That's also good, as long as I'm clear about explaining the differences between the two.
right.
I think the problem comes into play is when you're not clear about which one you're doing.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I like how you break that down. Okay, break down something else for me. Jeet Kune Do, an art and a philosophy, or an art or a philosophy? Which one is it?
I would say it's both. It's an art and a philosophy, but that doesn't mean you have to do both, right?
Huh.
So you can do JKD as an art, or you can follow it as a philosophy. I think Sifu Dan speaks about this, right? So if I mix karate and I mix, sambo, and I mix, Panentuken, then maybe I'm following the JKD philosophy, but I'm not doing JKD.
Right.
Right. And I think that is
You think
something that is confusing.
You think that's confusion out there? You think there's a confusion of that? Yeah.
I think it's confusing, but I think if you do the research, Sifu Dan actually has a video where he explains that pretty well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you came along into MMA almost 20 years after, 10 years after UFC 1.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you become an MMA coach?
Great question. It's definitely not something that I looked to do. First of all, we need to talk about JKD.
Okay.
As being the kind of like the grandfather of MMA.
Okay.
JKD is an art that stresses fighting in all the ranges. So is MMA. MMA is limited to certain ranges that JKD covers, but JKD covers more because JKD addresses the self-defense and the weapons, where MMA does not. So if you're training JKD the way that it's supposed to be done, you should be at least familiar with how to address an MMA, because JKD is MMA plus stuff. So when I first started in JKD, that's when I learned about MMA. And I remember, and things have changed. I need to say things have changed. I remember looking at the MMA guys when I first started JKD, thinking to myself, they suck, right? And they suck in various different ways. And I actually saw JKD and the training methods and the skill sets of JKD being ahead of MMA.
Right.
The reason why is because if you look at the history of MMA, right, when the Gracie train was going out, Paul Vunak was there, right? When you look at MMA, the first people to really embrace the BJJ culture when they came to California were a lot of the JKD gyms,
Right.
because they had that mentality of welcoming other styles and absorbing what was useful.
Mm-hmm.
So JKD, I think in the early 2000s was ahead of the curve because JKD had been already mixing martial arts and embracing other styles in their gyms, like actually bringing in instructors and saying, "Oh, you're from Russia?
Yeah.
You're a sambo expert, but you don't speak English? Well, I run a JKD gym. I'll let you teach 2 times a week in my gym,
Right.
and I'll learn from you." Right? The first people to really do that were the JKD guys. Now everybody does it. The karate guys do it now.
Yeah.
The first people to do it, as far as I know, were the JKD guys. So the way that I came to MMA was simply, I think I started in JKD during a time where the times were changing, where there's a passing of the guard going on, to where MMA was starting to take young 18, 19, 20-year-old tough guys that wanted to train,
Right.
guys that used to go to JKD.
Yes.
The demographic of people that used to be the core of the JKD population started becoming more and more interested in MMA.
Mm-hmm.
Because my interest was not MMA, initially it was more JKD. When I started training under Chris Smith, who I would call old school, don't hate me, Chris, he really didn't want to have anything to do with MMA.
Right.
So let's say you put it like this. Chris being my coach and me being training under him for a lot of years and growing under him, let's say he's about 10 years older than me. So then you have him as old school. Then you have the people that are 10 years younger than me. You have them as new school. You have me. I really feel like I'm in the middle. I have the old, so all the people that I look up to in the martial arts are in their 40s and 50s, right? They're old school. But the next generation of people, the people that were my peers when I was kind of like the Jeet Kune Do big brother, were all like 7, 10 years younger than me. They're all new school. So I felt like my interests kind of differed from theirs because I was more of the old school mentality, but these are my peers.
Right.
So what ended up happening was the younger guys in the gym all wanted to do the new thing, which was MMA.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to compete in MMA. They wanted to fight in MMA. Chris, like a lot of JKD guys, and when I say Chris, I don't mean any disrespect. Is that we're brothers. We're on that level. So I don't use the title Sifu Chris, but formally Sifu Chris. But to me, it's just he's like a brother to me. And I'm very informal anyway. And so just so that is clear, whenever I say Chris, put an imaginary Sifu in front of it. But he wasn't really as interested in the MMA side, in terms of the day-to-day effort that it took to build fighters. He was more of a martial artist, and I think he's coming around now.
Right.
He's embracing it now a little bit more.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like, oh, these guys want to fight, that sort of thing. And so for me, what I always just wanted to do was help people, right? So I trained a lot for myself with JKD, but then when the younger guys wanted to fight, it ended up being me holding the pads, me doing the training sessions. I will say that I didn't feel qualified to do it, but at that time that was okay because there were so many charlatans out there and there's so many people that didn't know what they were doing.
Right.
Everybody was learning.
Right.
Everybody was learning, so you basically learn on the fly, you do the best you can. And because I was just an assistant, I wasn't the coach, I was always operating under the instruction, under the supervision of Sifu Chris, but basically just doing the things that he didn't feel like or want to do.
Right.
And so we learned on the fly,
Yeah.
But because of our JKD training at the time, I can say that, we were ahead of the curve.
Of course.
Because there were a lot of people coming into it, boxing coaches teaching MMA, jujutsu coaches teaching MMA, and those are one-dimensional people, or wrestling coaches teaching MMA, whereas at least because of the JKD training that we had, we were doing boxing, we were doing Muay Thai. In fact, I have my Muay Thai shirt on now, or one of my old training shirts on. We were doing JKD. We were doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I had access to a great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach who actually later became my business partner. Still friends to this day. Still teaches at my gym. So we had all the pieces because of the JKD, because we would go out and look for those pieces. When I say we, I mean Sifu Chris. I was just a student at the time.
Right.
But I benefited from that culture and that environment that he created.
Okay. So Underdog is now a full-time gig for you. Okay. Who came up with the name?
Great question. You got great questions. What ended up happening was because of JKD, I basically with Chris, I was like his disciple. I followed him everywhere to get the training that I wanted. So wherever he had something going on, I would go be his uke, you know, whatever was, but I was also learning at the time. He used to teach Kali class at Wesleyan University. So I would go to assist him there. And there was a guy at the time, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, who later became my business partner. His name's Fabiano Tellez. It's kind of like an urban legend, and around the Hartford area.
Okay.
And we go to Wesleyan College, and we're doing our Kali class there for the college students. And Fabiano used to sneak into Wesleyan College to use the wrestling room to roll on the mats. So you bring guys with him. He rolled with some of the wrestlers and everything. And Sifu Chris had met Fabiano a couple of times before. Now, mind you, I'm like, at this point in time, I'm not me who I am now. I have some status in the community. At that time, I was a white belt and everything. I was just, you know, I was a nobody.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So my entry to getting through these doors was through Sifu Chris initially. So it wasn't like Fabiano had a relationship with me directly. It was more that he recognized Sifu Chris from the martial arts community.
Right.
I think Sifu Chris at the time was a blue belt, and I was just learning jiu-jitsu. This was around 2003, 2004. And we then became disciples of Fabiano, and we would follow him around wherever he went, wherever he taught. Sifu Chris would bring him in for seminars. And so what ended up happening, to make a long story short, of how Underdog was created was I was working a full-time job as an engineer. Sifu Chris lives about 45 minutes away from me, so I would work my job and then go drive about 45 minutes to where he taught. Yeah. I do that every day. Yeah. But as I started to advance in my job and my career, I didn't have the time to get out there to him. It became more stressful to be living in one part of the state and traveling to the other. But I had been training with Fabiano for years at this point in jiu-jitsu. I was on the verge of getting my blue belt. Maybe I had even gotten my blue belt already. So because he didn't have a place to train, and I'm a single guy, had a job, I didn't have any commitments. I had the extra money. With Sifu Chris's blessing, I asked Fabiano about starting a gym. And so originally when I started Underdog, it was for Fabiano. It wasn't for myself. It was just a place for me to be able to train close to where I live. Not for me to teach, not for me to do anything like that, but just for Fabiano to teach and for me to be a student. So the name Underdog actually comes from Fabiano's nickname. The gym was started for him. I think Sifu Chris came up with it. I'm not sure. I just remember we were all kind of in after training, sweating on the mats, kind of talking, bullshitting like we do. Can I say bullshitting?
You already did.
All right. I take it back if I can't say it. So we're all kind of just, tossing out ideas. And I remember, I think Sifu Chris came up with the idea of Underdog, but it was more before I had the gym. It was more kind of to support Fabiano. We put it on t-shirts and everything like that. So I know the idea wasn't mine. I can't remember exactly who first said it, but it came out of that training with Coach Fabiano, and then that whole dynamic.
Okay.
And then once I partnered up with him, I kind of took the name. And so right now I'm the keeper of the name.
Right.
And I think everybody's okay with that, but originally the name actually happened kind of paying respect to Fabiano.
Okay. And
My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach.
I noticed on the schedule that I don't see you teaching the puppies or the pit bulls.
Nope.
Well, you don't seem to be a guy who's afraid of challenges. Come on, how come?
So you asked some good questions. So a couple of reasons. This is my personal opinion. I think there are other people out there that do this well. I don't think I'm one of them. I believe it's very difficult to coach UFC fighters and kids, for one person to do both.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at building a business, building a gym, I coach the competitive fighters. I run the business. I run the gym. I do janitorial duties. I do marketing duties. I coach the staff and lead the staff.
Yeah.
I do the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
So there are people out there who are better able to handle more on their plate, and I see those people. But for me, I think I would not be able to do all the other things that I do and pay the attention to the kids that is necessary. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is I'm very informal, and I like kids a lot. I like relating to the kids in our gym. We have a really good relationship, and I can laugh with them, joke with them. I can discipline them, but for me to be the day-to-day person running a structured kids class,
right,
that's not what's my skill set, because I didn't come up in a karate school. I didn't come up doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a kid, so where I have that formalized structure that I think kids need.
Yeah.
So because of the importance that I think of that, I think it's better for me to be a mentor, to be a kind of a big brother in the gym, a father figure, whatever you want to say. I'm comfortable with those roles,
mm-hmm.
but it would be hard for me to have those roles and also be the person that was responsible for the day-to-day instruction of the kids. I think they would hate me because I'm a little bit of a stickler, and I just don't want to have that.
I get it.
I want it to be where I'm at the gym and like I can laugh and coach with the kids, joke with the kids, but then say, okay, now go do class, and if there's a problem, I can step up for it. And the last part of that is, initially when we started our kids program, it's a grappling based program. It's BJJ oriented.
Okay.
And so for me, striking is my forte.
Right.
So for me to teach a class in a subject matter that isn't my strongest skill set out of all the skill sets would require even more effort on my part to stay relevant and focused on that discipline than what I'm willing to put in. So I think as instructors, I think we all fall into this. I think sometimes we tend to teach in the areas that we're strongest in, which is probably for the better. And I think that's a difference between now and 15 years ago. 15 years ago, JKD instructors, the task was monumental because the calling was to teach your student in all the ranges.
Yes.
So a JKD instructor had to teach the Kali. He had to teach the hand trapping or whatever, the JKD, which now everybody's hand trapping, right?
Yeah.
And then they had to teach the Muay Thai. They had to teach the boxing. They had to teach the wrestling. They had to teach the grappling, Sambo, catch wrestling,
the
BJJ.
Yeah.
Right. That was the old school method of doing it. But I think because of the influence in MMA, I think what the customer really wants now is they want specialists in those areas. They don't want my BJJ. They're not paying $200 a month for my BJJ, or they're not paying that for their son to get coached by me in BJJ. They want somebody, regardless of their belt rank, they want somebody who's a specialist in that art to teach their child that.
Yeah.
So for me, striking has come easier for me. It's what speaks to me the most, which JKD in its core, I believe, is a striking art. So that's the area in my gym that I teach, and I focus on that one area. And I think it would be difficult for me to focus on other areas as well.
Okay.
So for all those reasons, I don't teach the kids.
And who did you study under for martial art business? Or did you just do that on your own?
The School of Hard Knocks, making a lot of mistakes. I still make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Break down for me essential difference between fundamentals of striking class and the striking class that I saw on the schedule.
I'm going to do that, but first I'm going to let my dog outside because he just got up and walked across the room towards the door. So just give me 30 seconds.
Okay. Okay. I hope that nobody else calls me because I forgot to put my phone on silent and to put the do not disturb thing on. So, but now I'm scared to touch it and mess everything up because we got a really strong connection. So
I'm back.
all right. Okay.
What was your question?
So essential difference between or the breakdown between fundamentals of striking, because that's one class label, and then the other class is labeled just striking.
Sure.
Right?
Well,
So
first
what's
let's
the
talk
approach?
about striking.
Okay.
The reason why I call my art striking is because I'm a JKD practitioner at my core, and I don't like really being confined by boxing or Muay Thai. For marketing purposes, it would be better to call my class Muay Thai, but a Muay Thai practitioner would come into my class, look at it and be like, right?
Yeah.
And I studied a lot of Muay Thai, and I can teach traditional Muay Thai. I just choose not to because I think there's a faster process to beating somebody up than learning traditional Muay Thai. So it's a boxing and Muay Thai blend, but the glue that holds it together is actually JKD. And I don't talk about that a lot, but that's really why it seems different, is because I'm doing things differently than those arts would do it.
Okay.
The difference between the fundamental striking and the striking classes is very simple. In fundamental striking classes, you will not get punched in the face. That's really the core difference. In striking classes, you may get punched in the face. But it's because I have a lot of people that I need a way to get them comfortable with contact so that they can learn the technique but feel safe, feel like they're not going to be overwhelmed. They'll learn all the same stuff that I would teach, except they're not sparring,
Right.
and any contact is minimal. So if you want to learn, you go to a fundamental striking class.
Right.
If you want to do, you go to a striking class.
Okay. The reason why I'm smiling is because I had a question here, and the question was, have you ever taken anybody from gun shy to killer?
All the time.
Right. I realized that in what you just said, in the structure, the structural difference between fundamentals of striking and striking. Obviously, you have. Right.
Well, I have, but I used to do it way differently.
How so?
Because I didn't used to have a fundamentals of striking class and a striking class. So
everybody got hit.
No. I got to say, you know, I a lot of it has to do with how I was taught by Sifu Chris, that I was able to pass on to my students. But at what once was revolutionary, now is commonplace.
Yes.
Right. I'll say it again. What once was revolutionary now is commonplace.
Yes.
What I mean by that is, in the MMA world 15 years ago, it was kill or be killed, dog eat dog. When you go into the gym, people were destroying each other. And that was the way the training was. So a lot of people shied away from that. Whereas in the martial arts world, our task is to build somebody up, to take somebody from being not tough and forge them into being tough. And so that's a little bit of a different process. And that's the process that I went through. I would consider myself to be somebody who was a not tough person, who was taught how to handle these very difficult situations of sparring or whatever.
Right.
And the way you do that is you have to teach somebody and you build them up slowly and you give them the tools to make them understand that they can handle the situation. In the training that I did, it was all as one, and it was by doing the drilling a lot. Drilling at 50%, 60%, what the JKD world would call isolation sparring. So jab only sparring, kick only sparring, right? These are things that were really done hours and hours and hours. Wall drills where you're against the wall and you're defending against the wall. So punches are coming in medium, then 60%, then 70%, until you can defend against the wall without thinking about it. And so those were training methods that I found when I was a new JKD student that I didn't see a lot of the other arts doing. It was more just like, this is a block, this is a punch, now go spar, right?
Yeah.
And what happens in that sort of training is the tough people thrive,
Yeah.
and the people who aren't there yet quit.
Right.
Right. And I wanted to do something a little bit different. And so now I've got a good culture where my senior students, they don't really beat up on the beginners.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of work with them, and they build them up over time. So now I don't have to do that work anymore.
Right.
It used to be work 10 years ago when I started. Now people kind of understand. And now, to be fair, that's common. Most gyms do it that way now. But 15 years ago, it was not like that in the MMA community. That's why MMA schools were small. It was more just fight clubs. It was, in somebody's basement or garage or warehouse or something like that.
Yeah.
Now the schools are more, when you're trying to teach people, you can't beat people up. You can only beat up the people that want to get beat up. Everyone else still has to learn.
Right.
They still might have to defend themselves in the street. And if they quit before they get to that point, then you failed as an instructor. You failed.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you something from left field. If we weren't here discussing martial arts and Jeet Kune Do, what might we be discussing? Like, what else are you passionate about?
It's a great question. Probably nothing.
Really? You're one of those,
yeah,
huh?
Yes. Socially, like, I'm more quiet. And I mean, like, most of my friends are from the martial arts world and everything. The people that I associate with are somehow in that world. So it really, this has become my hobby, then my passion, then my business. So a lot of my life revolves around that. I used to have other hobbies.
Yeah.
Like when I was growing up, basketball, I got into snowboarding, but for the most part now my life revolves around this. So any other conversations would probably be on like a personal level, if we were personal friends and things that are going on, life, family, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But in terms of like hobbies or enthusiasms, the more I got into martial arts, the less I cared about basketball and football. We might be talking about politics, right? I'm on CNN a lot. I like to talk about stuff that relates to us being minorities and Black Lives Matter and what have you, and Trump, stuff like that. But this pretty much fills up my life.
Hence the picture of you and Snoop Dogg.
What about it?
I know. That one, I had to put that one on the postcard for the dialogue because I was like, that's a cool picture.
So the funny thing about that is, do you know the reason why that picture happened?
No.
That happened because of martial arts. One of my guys were fighting on the Tuesday night contender series for Dana White in Vegas. So the only reason why I was in Vegas is because I flew to Vegas to coach.
Right.
We're at the UFC Performance Institute. My guy fought. My guy won. And then Snoop Dogg was doing the commentary because the UFC got celebrities to do commentary. So that Uriah Faber and Snoop Dogg doing commentary. After my guy won, Snoop Dogg came into the locker room to congratulate my guy. And I was there. And I guess when I'm shaved clean, some people say I look like Montel Williams, the talk show host.
Yeah.
So Snoop Dogg calls me Montel, and then he took a picture with me. So the only reason why that happened, it wasn't like I went to a Snoop Dogg concert or I don't even smoke weed. So it's not even that we have that in common.
Yeah.
That happened because of martial arts, and pretty much most of the good things that happened in my life, by choice, really, is an extension of what I do with the martial arts.
Right. And when did you ever have an inkling that this is where you might end up? No. I
don't like to quit things, and and I like helping people. I remember before I started the gym, somebody asked me, did I ever think I would own a business? I said, no, I never own a business.
Right. Yeah.
And then I started the gym as a club. And it was a club for Fabiano to teach jujitsu so that I could learn jujitsu. My dumb ass thought that if I started a gym, I would get to train for free. Now, anybody that knows martial arts and knows coaching knows that's stupid. That's stupid. When you own a gym, you pay more than you ever thought you would have paid. You pay more than any of your students put together.
All right.
I still continue to pay. I'm only now starting to make money off of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in 2008, I thought that if I opened the gym, it would be great because then I wouldn't have to pay anymore.
Right.
And that was stupid, right?
Yeah.
But that was the reason why I opened the gym. I thought I would have free access to training, which now I do, but it's like I'm so running around. I hardly get to indulge in the thing that I created. So I get a lot of satisfaction out of knowing that people get to benefit from something that I wish I had when I was 28 years old, 22 years old. And so I'm creating the gym that I wish I could have trained at when I was 18 years old. That's what I get out of it.
I saw a picture of you with a purple belt in jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a recent one.
It is as recent as I was actively training jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
But so I haven't been training it as much. Recently, I've been more focusing on trying to build a gym and build a business.
Mm-hmm.
I will make a return to the mats, but for right now, it's more, I spend most of my energy into coaching. But when I do start training more, it will be in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
We have a pretty good jiu-jitsu program at the gym.
The photograph of you in Lakeview Cemetery at Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee's gravesite, how recent is that?
That was a year ago.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you're the guy to answer this question, which pops up on the internet almost every day. Bruce Lee, you called Jeet Kune Do you said Jeet Kune Do was the grandfather, or did you call Bruce Lee the grandfather of MMA? Which one was it?
I wasn't trying to be specific when I said that.
Okay.
And I should be specific with my words. I generally am. But I think either could be true.
Mm-hmm.
Either could be said to be true. So yes.
Okay. All right. Now, as a JKD practitioner, as a JKD instructor, as an MMA coach, this is the other question that's always on the internet. Bruce Lee has no professional fight record, so he could not have been any good.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I think that is demonstrably false. And I think that people who say that are just not taking stock of the evidence that is around them. And I'll go on to say, well, first of all, if it's people that are not involved in the martial arts at all,
Mostly,
that are saying that,
probably,
then let's just completely ignore their opinion whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's talk about the people that are involved in martial arts.
Okay.
In the martial arts, I know people in my own gym. I can just use my own gym. I have the competitive fighters, and I know people that can beat up my competitive fighters that I train that don't compete. They have wives, they have jobs, they don't feel confident in going out in a cage and in lights and fighting. My competitive fighters aren't necessarily the best fighters in my gym. They're just the ones that have the guts to go do that crazy shit.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And they deserve credit for that. But anybody that actually trains in a gym, most of the competitive fighters will tell you one or two people who are just normal everyday accountants or doctors that might be able to also beat their ass. Right? So, and if you look at the martial arts community as a whole, not every martial art is a sport-oriented competitive martial art. There are a lot of great fighters who are not competitive fighters. But if you lock them in a room, they'll beat you up, right?
Yeah.
You know, and people who are fighters that train in martial arts gyms tend to know this to be true. That not everybody that is good competes.
Yeah. And do you experience any pull in any disparate directions, like between being a martial artist, dealing with martial sportists, dealing with fighters, running the business? I mean, so do you ever find yourself pulled in different directions? And if you do, how do you keep yourself centered and balanced?
I do feel myself pulled in different directions, but I feel like I say centered and balanced because I feel the pull in all those different directions equally. so, so I end up staying in the middle regardless because I can't go one side or another because then I'd be dropping something off. But I do separate Russell Leak the person and what motivates me from what I feel like the gym and the students need.
Yeah,
because they are different.
You said that right at the beginning. You said the goal of the instructor is not necessarily the same goal as the students. So
very important to remember.
Break that down for me. Yeah, because that's really good.
Well, I think that's where most instructors go wrong. I told you, this is my life. I have to remind myself, and I do remind myself almost every day, that for the majority of my students, this isn't their life.
Right.
So I can't put the expectations on them of what I think would be ideal because that's not their goal. So for me, I value, let's just use the best example, self-defense. For me, I think the martial arts, if you can't defend yourself, what the are you doing, right?
Right.
So for somebody that's a BJJ person, a sport BJJ person at that, and they're easy to pick on, it's easy for me to be like, what the hell, right? Because I think sport BJJ is great. But if you think that qualifies you to teach self-defense, if you think that makes you good at self-defense, then you're sorely mistaken, right? And I think sport BJJ is great. I own a BJJ gym, right? I think it's great. But there are a lot of people, because that's their personal expression of martial arts, my job is to help them in that personal expression of martial arts, even though it diverges from what I think would be my personal expression or what would be best even for them.
Huh. Okay.
That's the answer.
All right. So what's on the horizon for you on Underdog?
A lot. I mean, from a business standpoint, really is where I kind of am looking at now. There's so much I have to learn, so much I have to get better at. But that's an army. I want to build an army ultimately. And it's not just about the training. It's about the resources that the army has to bring to bear. So the more money you make as a gym, the better your gym can be, the better your students can be. So making money isn't just it is not a selfish thing. And I think that's also part of JKD, right? Is it tends to be anti-commercialism, anti-money, right? That sort of thing. But you have to realize that if you are commercially successful, then you can provide a better product to your students.
Yeah,
the two are related.
I call it professionally successful so that we stay away from the term commercial. So I just say professional.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. And I'm more direct. I want to make money. But I don't think that has to come at a sacrifice of my integrity.
Right.
So that will never happen.
Right.
But what's next on the horizon is just trying to do the business things that need to be done, so that I can ensure that I can continue doing this and my instructors can continue doing this. So that's really the thing that I've been trying to learn how to do better, because I didn't have any schooling or training in that. Other than that, it's more, we recently signed, just today actually, we can announce that we signed another fighter to Bellator. So she'll be representing, and she's actually she is, I want to say she's an associate or a full instructor under Richard Bustillo. So she's will actually be an IMB instructor
Okay.
who trained under my coach Chris Smith,
Yeah.
who's also fighting in Bellator MMA. That's huge for JKD in general.
Yeah.
I kind of, I'm her head MMA coach. I take that responsibility, but she's trained under many people. So we have some competitive, high level MMA fighters who represent the JKD brand in the cage. Whether it be Bellator, we have a couple, the UFC, the Contender Series, we have a couple. And the other thing is I want to start a teens class. We don't have a teens class now. So we have the kids class, which is the pups and the puppies. The next class will be the teens class. We haven't started that yet.
Okay, so be careful with that. Some people say the teens are the worst.
Well, so here's the thing. I like teens. I'll probably be teaching the striking portion of the teens class.
Okay.
I have no problem with teens. I was a math tutor in a high school for about 5.5 years.
Okay.
So I do well with that age group.
Okay. All right. Good for you. Yeah. Good for you. Okay. So I need to know three things. Is it in the air or the water in Connecticut that there's the Bellator and all these fighters? Because almost every time I hear about Bellator, it's somebody in Connecticut. So is it in the food, the air, or the water?
It's in the casino. Mohegan Sun is the biggest casino on the East Coast.
Okay. And
they have a stadium there that Bellator likes to come to. And so in Connecticut, we're spoiled. We're spoiled because the first time I went to a casino, it was the casinos in Connecticut, the Indian reservations in Connecticut. They're huge. I didn't know because I just went to Atlantic City for the first time.
Yeah.
And I went to Vegas recently when my fighters started fighting in the UFC.
Right.
Was my first time going to Vegas. So I'd never seen any other casinos. So you tend to think that they're all the same.
Yeah.
Mohegan Sun is monstrous. It's not like just a casino.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's an Indian reservation. It's huge.
Wow.
So they have like a stadium there. They have the casino. They have nightlife. They have hotels attached to it. It is really like a small Vegas style casino on the East Coast.
Okay.
It's bigger than anything you'll see in Atlantic City, right?
Right.
So it's a great venue for any promotion to come through. I think Bellator scored big by getting that casino. So because Bellator is a promotion that goes all around to the smaller markets, Connecticut being one of them,
right,
what they like to do is fill their undercard with local fighters, which is great for us. It gives our people a chance to shine locally. So a lot of the people that fight on the undercard of Bellator, wherever they go, are drawn from the local markets. And that's why Connecticut has that representation in Bellator.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any JKD people you'd like me to get on the program? Anybody that stands out for you?
Yeah.
Well, Christopher Smith is already on my list, and he's going to have a lot to answer for.
Oh man, and I'll tell you some things to ask him about. In fact, to be honest with you, you should have called him before you spoke to me. He would have put me on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I thought, when I thought about the chronology of it, I go, oh man, I hope Christopher Smith is not upset with me, that you came on before he did, right? So.
Yeah, because you met him in 1996 at the Francis Fong seminar. He told me all about it. That's how he is.
No.
Yes, he remembers. He remembers everything. That's how he is.
Oh, man. All right, I'm going to have my work cut out for me with this guy.
Yeah, well, I can help you with that.
Besides him.
It is worth saying because we only went through half of my JKD history, and we started off talking about other things.
Yeah.
The other half of it, so I gave you the half up to meeting. We didn't talk about Richard Bustillo.
Okay. Well, that's why there's all that. Okay. You want me? You really want me to tell you how I let that happen?
Mm-hmm.
I gave you one question and you answered 7 of them.
Yeah, I do that.
Right? So that's why this list is never ending, like I say all the time. You think you're gonna come on here once? No.
Yes. No.
No,
No.
no,
Oh.
no. You're gonna have to come
Oh.
back because I have to check in with you sometime in the future to see how the teams class is going, right?
Oh.
And then we got to talk about Richard Bustillo and whatever else it is that comes up, man. Are you kidding?
Yeah. So we have to talk about Richard Bustillo now. I couldn't be on the show and not talk about Sifu Richard. When I started training with Sifu Chris, he was my day-to-day instructor here. And then, Sifu Richard pretty much came out 3 times a year to the IMB affiliates in the Northeast.
Okay.
So I once again, I was a nobody at the time. So I would go to the seminars with Sifu Chris all the time, every single time he came out here.
Mm-hmm.
So Sifu Bustillo got to know me and got to know my face through the seminar circuit.
Right.
And I started training with Sifu Chris in 2003. I got my apprentice instructorship, which is the first level instructorship in JKD for most, in 2008. So it was 5 years. And that was seeing one branch of JKD. Through Sifu Chris, my day-to-day instructor, I got to see Bustillo, Vunak, and Hartzell.
Mm-hmm.
I was supposed to train with Sifu Hartzell literally the month before he died. He was supposed to be coming out this way. He passed away. That was unfortunate. But yeah, Sifu Chris was the biggest influence on my JKD by far. And then, I was fortunate enough to meet Sifu Peter, who
Mm-hmm.
who suggested that I speak with you, because he just came into my gym one day. I remember Sifu Peter tried to pull a fast one on me, and I'm pretty well read, and Sifu Peter's used to going places where people don't really understand who he is or what he's bringing to the table.
Yeah.
And, he tried to say something slick like, I train Junfan Gung Fu, and like I wouldn't know what that was because I have JKD on my instructor's bio in my gym. And he was like, yeah, I used to teach at the Inasanto Academy, once again, thinking like I wouldn't like understand what that was. But we became friends. So those are my main JKD influences, in terms of like one-on-one time is Sifu Bustillo, Sifu Chris Smith, and I got to see one particular blend of JKD through them.
Yeah.
And for me, the piece that was always missing just so happened to be the piece that Sifu Peter does the best and pretty much primarily, which was the more traditional, trying to teach what Sifu Dan teaches the way that Sifu Dan would teach it, trying to teach what Sifu Yuri teaches the way that Sifu Yuri teaches it. That's why Sifu Peter calls his expression on JKD, Legacy JKD,
Mm-hmm.
because I really could see, because he's a lawyer and he takes notes, he's very meticulous in that way.
Yeah.
He shared with me a window into JKD history that I don't think is common, and you don't get to see much anymore. Okay. And so now when I look at the DVDs of like Sifu Dan's DVD, like the 8-10 DVD set that he has,
yeah.
When I look at Sifu Rambalicki's DVD, when I trained with Sifu Yuri, the few times I went to the Inasanto Academy, I'd go out there and I'd try to take all the classes that I could, both with Sifu Dan and Sifu Yuri. What Sifu Peter does in terms of teaching JKD is almost a copy of the classes that you would, like, you go to an Inasanto seminar and the way he teaches the progressions, Sifu Balicki, it's very, very, very close to a person that didn't train with most of those people.
Right.
When I look at if you were not a disciple of those people,
right,
it would be very difficult to tell the difference functionally between what Sifu Peter chooses to show and what you see from those guys. So that was very helpful for me.
Okay. All right. I'm down to 5% power remaining on my iPhone. I don't have a super battery that an Android would have.
Sure.
So let's end with this. Greatest piece of advice you got from Richard Bustillo?
It's really difficult.
Okay.
It's difficult because when Sifu Bustillo used to come to the Hartford, Connecticut area, Sifu Chris lives 45 minutes away from me. He lives 45 minutes further away from the airport than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I live 20 minutes away from the airport. Sifu Chris lives an hour and 20 minutes away from the airport. So most of the time Sifu Bustillo comes to the area, I would pick him up from the airport and drive him to Sifu Chris's gym. Or after the seminar was over on a Sunday, I would be responsible more times than not of driving him to the airport. So there were, for a period of 7 years, I got the opportunity to at least once or twice a year either make one of those hour-long drives to and from the airport.
Priceless.
Alone with Sifu Bustillo.
Yeah.
So you can tell the way I am now. Picture me 10 years ago being new to JKD. That man would answer any question I asked him. He was very generous with his time, with his answers. He's a very personal person. And it is unusual for somebody who is not even an apprentice instructor. Like Sifu Dan, if you are not one of Sifu Dan's guys, right, an instructor under Sifu Dan, you're not driving him anywhere. You're not driving him to the airport. You're not having dinner or lunch with him one-on-one. You won't even be in the room when the lunch is had. The instructors will go off and have lunch with Sifu Dan, and you'll have lunch by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas Sifu Bustillo is more of like he used to have what you call the aloha spirit, which is everybody welcome, everybody has access to him. He's a very accessible person.
Yeah.
So I've had because I'm not Sifu Bustillo's, even though I'm ranked under him, I'm far removed. He has guys that are above me within his organization. So for me to have the sort of access to him that I've had is really not usual for somebody of as many generations removed as I am.
Get it.
So I couldn't give you one piece of advice or information. I can say that I've had many multiple hour conversations with him only because I was the chauffeur from the airport to and fro.
Cool.
And yeah.
Very cool. All right, Russell Leak, I thank you so much for carving out some time from your busy schedule for me, man. I enjoyed this. This was fun. Cool.
I saw your videos on Expert Village a long time ago, so I've known who you are for a while. So it was nice to talk to you.
All right, same here, man. We'll do it again because I'm gonna check in. I'm gonna check in with you in the future. Oh yeah.
I can think of so many questions you should have asked me, but you don't know me.
Don't worry. Well, see, I know what you're talking about though, but I'll work on it.
Talk to Chris Smith and talk to Eric Cologne.
Okay, got it. All
so
right, man.
Go research who that is.
I will. All right, you take care.
You too.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
All right, good one. Episode number 88 of the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues with Russell Leak. You can check him out at underdogmma.com. Okay, that's it. Feel free, share, like, comment, ask questions. I'll ask Sifu Russell to take a look, and if there's anything that you need him to answer, sign up for notifications for when we go live here on Facebook, and please subscribe and hit the notification bell on the YouTube for the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast, the Jeet Kune Do Dialogues, and the new FMA Files programs. Follow me on Twitter at Dwight Woods and on Instagram at Dwight D. Woods, at ilovejeetkundo.com. The Quick Skills Series Volume 1 is available. Coming up on Friday, next Friday, September 20th, episode number 89 with Leo Fong. And I have to verify the time on that one. I may have messed up the time on that one, but that will be for next Friday. During the week, you guys know there's the I Love Jeet Kune Do broadcast, and we might do FMA Files next Wednesday, but you know where to find me, so just keep your eyes and ears open. All right, that's it. Everybody enjoy your weekend. This is Dwight Woods, the Jeet Kune Do Rebel, signing off. Take care. See you again. planted by the rivers of water that bringeth forth fruit, bringeth. Ba-da-da.
Oh,
Was that easy?
yeah, actually, it came through on my phone, so I don't need an Apple. I have an Android.
It came on your Android?
Yeah, I'm just on Facebook now, so it's working just fine.
Ah, well, they must have updated that without telling me. All right, so this works then, huh?
Yeah, it works just fine.
Okay. And 3 p.m. is good for you?
Yep.
And you're not on an iPhone, you're on an Android.
Yeah, I'm on Android right now.
Wow. All right. Well, cool. All right. So I got a couple hours to do more research on you. I cannot find anything. I'm sure you're like an undercover guy.
I kind of am. We can talk about that when we go into it. It's like I'm not like in the witness protection program or anything, but yeah, there's not a lot. I'm mostly, more often than not, I'm the man behind the camera.
Right.
The man making things happen.
Yep.
So it just kind of happens that I promote those around me, but not a lot of myself.
Right. No, I got that. And that's definitely something I want to delve into for sure.
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Cool, man. I'll see you in a couple hours then.